when I was a teenager and before, maybe a little bit more. Um, my dad had, with his player piano, he had like 200 rolls. So I grew up listening to all those songs, like the Old Rugged Cross, which always reminds me of my dad, and they sang that at his funeral, and my niece, Marilyn, sang that at his funeral. Just tore me apart. Anyhow, and things like My Blue Heaven, and the some of the marches, the Sousa things and all that. He had all that on these rolls. So when I hear those songs, it reminds me of that. And so really, even though we didn't have a piano, we had a piano, a player piano, even though we didn't have stereos in those days, or we didn't have record players and stuff, I grew up with those things, the 200 rolls, listening to those, and a radio, which my dad had a fit when I listened to Boogie Woogie, because that was, destructive, and
oh really?
you're gonna go to hell.
Oh really? He was in hellfire and damnation.
I couldn't even wear shorts to the store. My youngest sister got to wear a bikini, but when I grew up, I couldn't even wear shorts to the store, and you wouldn't wear a red dress, because that was like a streetwalker,
So he was kind of from the hellfire and damnation kind
Well,
of
he
thing?
was very kind of fundamentalist type, yeah. He really believed everything he read in the Bible, literally, and he lived that way, and, you couldn't iron on Sunday, Sunday was a day of rest, so he had a fit when I'd set up the ironing board, things like that. And, of course, I guess I was kind of a rebel in some ways. And I went to church. There was a church down the street from us in Bloomington. It was the First Church of Christ. I went to that, to Sunday school and things for many years while we lived there. And then somehow some of my friends or something must have taken me to the Methodist church in Bloomington. And because it was on the other side of town, and how I got there I don't remember. So apparently somebody drove me or something. Strange, boy, you forget so much. And it might even been Annalise family. I don't remember, but that was when I was baptized. When I was 12, I was immersed.
At the Methodist church?
At the Methodist church.
So what did your dad think about all that?
Oh, he was for that. He was always after me to go to church, but he wouldn't go, even though he read the Bible every day. He said, I don't have the clothing to go. He always had a vest on. Even though he was a blue-collar man, he always wore a vest and a tie and a hat. He had a lot of hair, so he'd wear this hat. Dan, I always thought he slept in it just to hold his hair back, because he had so much hair. But he was always dressed neat like that, and but he always said he never had the clothing to wear to church, so I think
It was an excuse?
No, I think he was into I really believe that when he lost his business, he went into a depression. He never came out of it, really. It did a lot to his self-esteem and everything, I think. And because he was always kind of negative, he couldn't, he was just always kind of, I don't know, I guess that's where I got a lot of it, worried. He always was worried. And he didn't seem anxious or anything, because he was so, like he held everything in, but he was worried about money and things like that, which he had good reason, I guess. And so anyhow, then when I became a teenager, my early teens, they had that teen canteen there in Crane. There was a Church of God, and I went to a revival, I think when I was 12 or 13. And I had a born-again experience, which I think really affected me for a long, most of my life, because from then on I wanted my life I wanted to lead a good life, But that born-again experience was quite an experience. But the only problem was, they didn't believe in dancing.
Mm.
They didn't believe in going to movies.
You gotta
They
have
didn't
some
believe
joy
in
in your
music.
life.
And for 2 weeks, all I did was cry because I felt guilty because I loved music. I loved dancing and all that, you know. And my dad says, as much as I want you to go to church, if it's going to do that to you, I don't want you to go to that
Yeah.
church. You know.
Gotta have some joy in your life.
Yeah. So that was my experience with fundamentalism. And so let me see. Also, I wanted to talk about my mother's sisters. I don't think I can remember all my cousins' names, which is disturbing to me because it was so important to me. But there was Aunt Donna, was the oldest. Her name was Donna Hawkins. She was married to John Hawkins. And I know she had Kent and Donna Mae. And I think she had another 1 or 2 children, and I can't remember their names. And there was Thelma Johnson. She was married to, what's her husband's name? I forgot. Floyd Johnson. And they had a son named Dick, and I had a crush on him. He had this black hair and watery blue eyes. He was so handsome. Of course, he was older than me, you know. And I only saw him maybe once a year if I was lucky. And then there was Aunt Marie. She never got married. And she ended up taking care of my grandmother when she was ill later in life. And she just died not very long ago. Anyhow, back up, Donna died in her 40s, I think it was, after a surgery, suddenly. And Aunt Thelma died of bowel cancer pretty late in life. I'd say probably late 70s or 80s. And Marie lived to be 90-something. And Mabel, she lived to be, I would say, in her late 70s or more. Mabel, she was married to Fred Clark, and they had a son named Jerry and another boy, and I can't think of his name.
These are all your mom's family, right?
This is my mom's. And then there was Aunt Daisy, who's, she was married twice, and they both, well, the first one she divorced, and the second one died. Her last name, her third husband was LaFlower, so she had 3 husbands. And she's 93 and she's still living. And she has Mary Evelyn and Agnes. And then there was Russell Daniels, my mother's brother, we called him Bob. He was married to Agnes, and they had, I thought, 6 children, but I can only remember these names: Barbara, Phyllis, Dale, and Sarah. So maybe there wasn't any more. And then there was Uncle Art. He was married to Nellie, and their last name was Daniels, and they had 2 boys, Jim and David. They both lived here in California. And then my mom. And my Aunt Ruth, she had 4 children, and I can remember 2 names. It's terrible, I can't go any farther. There was Ray and Stella Pearl. Drives me crazy. And Aunt Stella had 1 daughter named Wilma. And everybody's gone. They're all gone, but Aunt Daisy. She's the only one living still. Anyhow. Pam wanted me to talk about songs that bring back memories. Well, you know, when you're a teenager, it wasn't any different in my day, where you just lived for music. And the only way we could hear the music was if you were lucky enough to hear it on the radio, which I didn't get to hear that much at home, was on the jukeboxes. And so we'd know the songs, all the names, and then going to movies too, you know. And like my girlfriend and I would sing Chattanooga Choo Choo and Sentimental Journey and oh gosh, all those songs, we knew them and sing them together, you know. And then when I was in high school, as long as I can remember, I would, if I didn't pack my lunch, I'd walk to this restaurant and I'd have a toasted cheese sandwich. I'd have a quarter for lunch, but a toasted cheese sandwich, a Coke, and a nickel to play Moonlight Serenade. And so that song always touches me. And so then Pam wanted me to tell you about this funny thing. When Al and I was going together as a teenager, he taught me to drive. He had that car, And I don't think I was a very good driver. But he would, when he couldn't come out, he'd let me have the car, and I'd drive it to the basketball games and load it up with kids and drive around town and drive myself home. This is about 17 miles on a country, not a country road, but a highway, a county road, paved. uh, and then one time when we were double dating with Shirley and Hiffner, and yeah, and she married George Hiffner. He was another Marine. And we were coming home from a dance over past Lagodi, back to Crane, and we were coming down this road, and they were all sleeping in the car, and I'm driving. I don't know, they might have had a beer or two, because they drank and I didn't. And there was this 45, is it 90 degree or 45? A real sharp turn. He almost had to come almost to a stop to make the turn to go to Crane, the road to Crane. Well, I was going too fast, and I tried to make the turn anyway, and I ended up riding through this farmer's cornfield, and they all woke up with all this corn flapping around their ears, wondering, where the heck are we,
So did you have to back up to get out of it?
I don't even remember how we got out of there. There must have been a ditch. I don't remember. Knowing Al, he drove out somehow. But he was a little mad. And then the sheriff in town knew I didn't have a license, and he'd stop me every once in a while and say, "Did you get your license yet?" Which I didn't until after my fifth baby, or right before Kathy was born. I drove many years, though I had to. I never had the confidence to go get my test. And it was terrible when you think back about it, I was driving without a license. And I was scared, too, most of the time. But, what else was there? Most of the time Al drove, but it was pretty hard. I didn't like depending on my neighbors to take me shopping, and I had to drag all the kids along, and some pretty scary experiences with cars. Al and I got in a real bad accident with his nice yellow car right before we got married. We were coming out of Indianapolis, and he's going through this little town, and he's going to pass this big lumber truck, and it turned left in front of us as we're passing it, and we went right under the bed of the truck, and it came all the way up to the windshield, the bed of the truck, and a bottle of brake fluid, a can of brake fluid flew right between our heads and hit the windshield. But I don't know how we came out of that without getting injured.
Miracle.
Yeah. And then we had to catch a bus to Bloomington from there, and we stayed at my aunt's house that night. And I couldn't get a hold of my parents because we didn't have a phone at home.
You never had a phone at home?
We never, and I think that to this day that's why phones bother me, because I never had a phone until I got married. Long after I got married. And so if I had to make a phone call, I'd go to where I worked at the Anchor Inn, and that Anchor Inn was another thing. That was the one that looked like a shoebox kind of, and the hamburgers were 10 cents each, and they had grilled onion on it. And the Marines would come out and they'd order like 50 at a time, from the guys in the barracks or something. And it was such a funny little place. But it was kind of neat in a way, too. It was so small and intimate, and all kinds of characters coming in there, And you'd sit in the booth and talk for hours. And
what did you do there? Were you a waitress, or?
Yeah, behind the counter. Same at
Did you didn't have to cook?
Yeah, I had to cook them, too.
You had to cook the hamburgers?
Cook them and serve them. Got a quarter an hour.
So you were working while you were in high school?
Yeah. Part of the time. And then when that was before I went to work across the street at Vance's. that's where I started going with your dad, was over there when he'd walk home from work. So, I guess, where did we leave off? Jackie was born and we moved to Ambler Avenue, and we were there. Actually, we lived with Al's family in the same houses with Al's family for 7 years. And then that's when I was pregnant with you, and we borrowed the money from Aunt Teresa for a down payment for a house out in Manor Headlands. And moved out there 2 days after you were born. And that was probably one of the happiest times of our life. It was so nice to be out on our own, an hour away from Cleveland, and felt like we were out in the country, Mud everywhere.
That was in Menor, right?
Yeah. And we moved in, and there wasn't a lawn put in until after the winter.
So why did you guys choose Mentor?
I don't know. Probably one we could afford.
Was it because it was near the lake, or no?
Yeah, we liked that too. There was a beach not too far away, and it was where the houses were cheaper. Al wanted a double house so bad in Cleveland, but I didn't want anybody living in the same house. I just was, and he threw that up to me years later, We could have had so much more if we would have had the house paid for, if we'd had a double, like his friends would have a double, and the renters upstairs were practically making their house payment, But I needed my peace of mind.
Would have been a much worse neighborhood later on, though, because all those double houses were in the bad neighborhoods.
Well, they weren't then, but years down the way, the old neighborhoods changed, It wasn't safe. So, we had clay, mud, and the kids would get stuck out in the yard, and I'd have to go out and try to pull them out, and their boots would stay in the mud, and it was terrible. All that mud tracked in the house, and had to hang up clothes. It was fun in the summer. Al always worked like hour away from home, it seemed. He had long drives in the winter. It was scary. Never got to go see my mom and dad much, though, because they never had room to put us up. And so maybe once a year I'd get to see my parents. And my brothers and sisters, and that always bothered me. That they didn't get to know my kids very much. Refresh my memory a little.
You want to stop for a minute?
Yeah.
Where'd they go? There they are.
They're up there. Sure big.
Yeah, they're pretty.
This one was little black and white ones would come around. Got a lot of wildflowers blooming up there right now. I should get some and press them. Got lots of fresh flowers.
Yes.
I love the springtime.
So pretty.
Prettiest time. Of course, when the daffodils were blooming and the crocuses and things, it was pretty too.
It's too bad the turkeys aren't back there.